Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to make an objective system. So to get started you just make a base plate, and I might leave some code in the description, but I highly recommend that you follow along and you understand what the scripts do. So first of all, to get started you want to open replicated storage, make a folder, and just call it, for now we're just calling it objective system RE or remote event. We're gonna add two remote events for this one, but you can add as many as you want. So I'm gonna call this objective 1, and then I'm gonna call this one objective 2. Inside server script service, we're gonna make a script and we're gonna call this objective server. And inside of starter UI, we are going to add a screen GUI and make our label and stuff. So I'm gonna start by a frame and I'm just gonna scale this a bit up. Doesn't have to be exact, and I'm going to set the transparency to 0.8. Then I am going to, not inside the frame, but inside the screen GUI, which I'm gonna recall objective UI. Inside the frame, I'm gonna call this background frame. So inside the objective UI, you want to add two text labels. So one of them you call the main text, and one of them you call the object text. Okay, with the main text, you just put it right up in the top. You can make it a bit smaller if you want. Doesn't have to be exactly like mine. I'm making a pretty bad one, and I'm sure you can make a much better one by taking a bit more time. So I'm gonna scale this up, and I'm gonna set the font to Fundamento, and then I'm inside of it gonna add a UI stroke, and I'm gonna set the text to white, and I'm gonna make the UI stroke have a thickness of 2. And then actually what we want to do now is, this is going to be the object text. So I'm just gonna set the text to objective, and then up here I'm actually just gonna delete this text, copy this text, and then call it main text. And then I'm just gonna move it up here, and actually I'm gonna set the text for this to do something, and then this up here would be the objective. So I want to make it a bit larger, and I'm going to, just for the sake of it, I'm going to make it red, and then this text down here will be okay. So now inside of the objective UI, I'm gonna add a local script, and let me think, what else do we need? I think this is all we need for now. Just quickly, I'm gonna add a UI corner into the frame, just to, not a UI stroke, a UI corner, just to make it more pretty to look at. There we go. And now you can see it's rounded off in the edges. So starting off at the server, we need some basic vars, so variables. We need to get the replicated storage. So I'll say local replicated storage. This game get service replicated storage. Then we need to get the workspace as well. So same thing as replicated storage, just do workspace. Then we need to set the REs. So I'll do replicated storage objective system RE. So actually we're just gonna call this one the RE, local RE folder. So ref folder, actually just gonna call this ref. My naming is not so good, but you can call these whatever you want. Just make sure that they are set to what they need to be. Also workspace we'll just call RS. Okay, now we can get the two actual remote events. So we can say ref.objective1, and we can say ref.objective2. And now we can call this one the objective2 equals to this one, and local objective1 equals to this one. So now we have the actual objectives. Now we need to make the text vars. So I'll say local text1, which will be displaying the text for the first objective. So I'll just make it a string, and I'll make text2 a string. And honestly, you can put whatever you want in these. For the sake of this video, I'm just gonna do subscribe to casual code, and down here I'm gonna do test. So you now have the two texts, but remember you can add as many as you want, and you can add whatever text inside of this. If you want to have some names or numbers or something as well, you can just connect these up. So let's say you wanted to have a name. I don't have a player variable, but then you could do like player.variable with the 2 dots, and then dot dot, and then blah 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 over here. But I'm just gonna add a string for my system here. Now we need to main the main function for this server. So I'm actually gonna say main f server. So what we need to do is we need to say objective1 dot no wait, we need to oh yeah, okay. Just have to think about this one. We need to make some trigger parts. So the way you make these trigger parts is actually pretty simple. What you do is you go into the part inside home. You add 2 parts. I'm just gonna make one like a bit of a square and make it a bit thicker. And I'm gonna turn cast shadow off, and I'm going to turn anchored on, cancel that off, and I'm gonna call this one trigger part 1. Duplicate it, move it to the side, and I'm gonna call this one up to red and this one up to, I'm gonna call this one trigger part 2. So now that we have these 2 trigger parts right here, we need to define them in our script. So we'll say WS, which is the workspace from before. Actually, we'll say local, we're gonna folder these up, so hold them both and press group as a folder. And I'm gonna call this one objective workspace. So do local ow equals to WS, was our workspace from before, dot objective workspace. Do local trigger 1 equals to dot trigger part 1, local trigger 2 equals to ow dot trigger. So now we need to set it so whenever you hit these parts it will trigger. So in my case I want it to happen so that when they touch this part then this objective will change. Or if your script you can do anything else. Really you just have to bind an event to firing off this remote event. So let's say you checked whenever a key is taken. So you make a key, you can do proximity prompt, and once it's taken you want to fire a remote event. Just do that instead of this trigger function. So you can basically do whatever you want. You just have to change the actual event you want. So because I'm doing trigger in my case, I'm gonna say trigger1 dot touched connect function. Just gonna call it hit for now. In this case it doesn't really matter what we input it because we're not giving it anything, so we don't need to tell it which argument we're giving it. So inside this function I'm actually gonna copy this, put it down here and say trigger2. So now whenever these get touched, this function will fire. And talking about firing, we want to fire these objective. So I'm gonna say objective1. Actually, I'm gonna make a loop for all the players. So for guy player in pairs game.players get players. So this is a for loop do for all the players in the game. So basically whenever this function is ran, then we will loop through all the players in the game. And for each player, the code we're going to be running for each player is we're going to trigger the remote event, because in this system we wanted to trigger for everyone in the game so everyone sees the objective. So basically what we do down here is to say objective1 fire client, and we give it the player which we defined right here. So what this does is that it when it's touched, when this first part is touched, it will go to a function. So all the code inside this function will trigger inside this one. And what that means is that it's going to, every time this is touched, it's going to loop through the players, and for each of the players it's going to fire the client, and we're giving in the players, so we're telling which client to actually fire to. So then we can then pick up this remote event later and we can do all of our GUI work with it. Okay, so what we do down here, trigger2, we just do the same thing. So for underscore comma player in pairs game.players get players do, move this end down here, and we just do objective2 fire client, and we pass in the player again. Okay, for now this is all we need for the server script. I don't believe there's anything else, and if there's anything else we will go back and add it inside this local script, which we will rename to objective client. We will go ahead and first get our we need all of this, so we're just gonna copy paste this in. You can remove workspace because we don't need that. So I'm just gonna say this vars again up here, because this is the base variable we need. So now we are telling this client script what all these objectives are. So now we need to make a text. So we'll say local text1 equals to blah blah, local text2 equals to blah blah. And I messed up over here because I added them to the server, but we don't actually want these in the server, so I'm just going to delete these, and we're just going to say subscribe to casual code. And the next one we're going to say this is objective2, because we need them to show on the client. We don't need it in the server script because we need to pass it in for the client. Anyways, now we can do main F for the client. So the way we're going to do the main function for the client is that we will get the event. So when we fire them, we want to pick it up. So the way we do that, saying this, and then on client event. So whenever it fires from a local script, when either fire client or fire our client. So this is when it fires, and basically you choose this to pick it up. For now, if we don't have this, then it will just fire. But since it won't be picked up anywhere, then no code will run when it fires. It will just fire. So to check that it actually fired, after this one, we're gonna say print fired. But we're gonna do it down here as well. So print fired. And then inside this one, we'll connect this to a function. And we don't actually need to give the function a name yet, or arguments, I mean. I don't think we really need to pass any arguments for this one, but you can do whatever you want. And I'm going to delete all this. I don't know why I pasted that in. I'm gonna print. So here comes the longer code. What we are going to do for this code is that we will need to loop through the players. So, or not for the players, but we will need to loop and then make specified text visible. But for this, we need to define all our UI. So I'm just going to call this section UI, and there's a bunch of this. So going into the objective UI, we need to firstly get the actual started UI, which is where all our things are located. But in this case, when you do started UI, the thing with started UI is that it gets cloned into the player, into something called the player UI. So if you want to change text, we can't change the clone text, because basically we're changing this text down here. But you have to think about it, when this game runs, then this screen UI will be pasted into the player, and essentially we can change something down here for sure, but it won't be updated to the player. So we need to change it actually in the player UI. So to do that, we need to get the player. So in a local script, you can just do again the players.local player, and this will get each player in the game when you call it, or the specific player. And then down here, we can define the player UI. So local player GUI equals to player, wait for child, player GUI. So this gets the player GUI that we actually need. And now inside this player GUI, we can go down here. We could add it into the UI, but I'm just gonna have it up there. We can say local OU, which stands for the objective UI. We can do player UI, wait for child, objective UI. And you might be wondering right now what all this means, but let me go ahead and show you in game actually what this means. So essentially, you can see that our objective UI is down here, but inside the players, if you go ahead and open me up right here, inside you see one called player GUI, and you press on the button, and in here you can see we have 3cam, which comes automatically. It's the ability to move the camera around. And then we have the objective UI now. So whenever we update something, it will update in the objective UI, not in the started UI. And since it's cloned in here, this will take change, because that is what we actually see. We don't see what's inside started UI. So inside of objective UI, you can see we have all of these things. So now we define objective UI. We need to define these two texts we want to change, and we want to define this frame as well. You can see when I actually press on it, it will highlight over here, rather than when I press over here, it will highlight like this scaling thing right here. But it will not actually take action, as you can see. You can see it's not changing. That's because it is from the started UI. Like, it's not actually moving. So what all this means is that we now just need to define our two texts. So opening this up so I can see what the names are, we will do local MT, stands for main text, equals to OI dot main text, and we can do local OT equals to OI dot object text. So now we have the two texts we want to change. In this script, I want the objective to just be the objective. I don't want it to actually change at any point. So essentially, let's think about this. Essentially, we have to change the object text. We don't have to change this, but I still want this text to fade in. I want a cool effect whenever you touch the part that fades in the objective. And I also need to make sure that the frame is only visible when the objective comes up. So to do this, we need to define the frame as well, so we can modify it. So we'll do local BF, standing for background frame, equals to oi.background frame. Okay. We also need to remember that once we have these UI strokes right here, what this means is that if I give them a name, I'll call them text stroke. What this means is that when we just change the text, because normally you would just set the text transparency to 0, but what that actually does in this case, it sets it to 1, is that it gets only black, and that's because our thing here is also on. So we need to set the transparency in the text stroke to 0 and the main text to text transparency to 1 for it to like fully disappear, as you can see. And let's say we'll just look like this, and we don't want that for sure. So setting this back to 0 because we want to change that at a later point, we can go ahead and make sure that these are actually checked in. So I'm gonna do wait, and then you can use task.wait, but I prefer using wait. What you can do now is you can make sure that the bf.visible equals to false. So we're gonna make sure that it's false when the player loads in. When all of these variables load in, we want to make sure that the background frame is not visible. We want to make sure that the empty dot. Okay, let's make a new line for this. So changing main text and changing object text, because we actually need 2 in this one. So first we'll do empty, which is main text, dot text transparency equals to 1, and we'll do empty dot text stroke dot transparency equals to 1. What we'll do down here is we'll copy this right here, and we'll just do OT instead, not OT. There we go. Okay, so essentially what this little part of the script does is that every time the player loads in, then all of this, even though we set this to not be visible, we want to just be sure that everything is invisible. So running this game, what you will see now, hopefully, is that it's not there. Boom, as you can see, the objective UI is completely gone. Great. So now we can actually get working on our main function client. And one last thing I'm going to define is I'm gonna call it sound, and I'm gonna add a local sound. I'm gonna call it objective sound equals to game get service sound service dot objective sound, and this doesn't actually exist for now, so we need to define it. So inside sound service, add a sound, rename it to objective sound, and I'm going to quickly on Roblox find a sound. So the way you do this is you go to your page, go to Roblox, and just search blah blah blah. Go into the creator marketplace at the bottom of the search panel, and I'm gonna search Skyrim quest because I really like this quest, this sound. Okay, so you press Shrine Studio. No, you don't actually. You just press more info and you copy the ID. You might need to I already have it in my inventory because I've used this before, but you might need to download this. So after you've gotten your ID, you want to go into sound ID, just paste it in, make sure that the time length is updated. When it says a number like 5.041, then that means that it's a valid sound. And if it doesn't do that, then in the output you will see that it's unable to add the sound or something. And then you just have to pick something else. So you can press preview. Don't know if you guys can hear that. It's very, it's not very loud. But to fix that, we're just gonna turn up the volume a bit. Okay, so now we have all our little variable components for this script. We can quickly go ahead and do the mainf. So for now, we're just gonna have this, but I'm going to copy this over to Objective2, the on-client event connect function. So testing this script real quick, what you will see is that you saw it was visible for a second, but now it's fired and it's picked up, and you can see it gets fired and picked up so many times. And essentially every time this happens, all of the remote exits even lag in my game. It's happening so many times. So to fix this, what we simply go ahead and do is, because anyways we only want the thing to appear once, so we just trigger to destroy, and we do it over here as well. Trigger 1, destroy. Now if you go ahead and run the game again with only these 2 lines of code, go ahead and see what happens. Fired, picked up only once, and fired, picked up only once. Great. This is just what we need. Now we can go ahead and actually manage these. So quickly, I'm just going to delete this because we're just going to copy paste it when we're done. I'm going to play the sound for anything else, and it's going to be play. So now we will play the sound whenever this happens. We don't need to test this because there's nothing that can go wrong with this one line of code right here. And what we need to do is actually make a loop now. And I'm going to set it to for equals 0, 0, 0 for now, do. And what you will see, for I equals 0, 0, 0, and then it will add an end over here. And after this end, I just want to make sure that all the text is set to what it needs to be. So essentially what we will do here is we will do empty dot text transparency. We'll just take this code, actually, this empty code over here, and change 1 to 0. This will run for this will be the empty loop. And then we would need one more for the OT loop as well. So this is all you need to do. We'll add code here in a minute, but this is all you need to do for now. So just copying over here, and what we'll do, we'll say empty loop. Then we'll go down here and we'll copy this and we'll say OT loop. Essentially this will loop through the text in the empty, and this will loop through the text in the OT. So then we'll just change this to ot.textTransparency and ot.textStroke. Okay, so what this for loop does is that 1 is the start, 0 is the goal, and minus 0.02 is the increment. So basically every time this for loop runs, the 1 will go down by 0.02, and this will run every 0.02 seconds until it reaches 0. So what we have to do in this is that this means that it will slowly fade. But the way it will slowly fade is that we set the empty.textTransparency equals to I, so it will be the value of I. Empty.textStroke.transparency equals to I as well. And then finally we'll set the text to whatever we want. So in this case we'll just say objective, because that's what we want the main text to be. We want it to say objective. So what this does is that it will run through this, and then it will end, and then we're just making sure that there's 0 after this. Now what you can do down here is the OT loop, you can write it all over. But what I'm going to do is I'm just gonna remove this, and I'm gonna copy this, paste it down here, and we're just gonna have to change everything. So starting with the text, I'm gonna do set this as text 1, and then just have to do OT and all of this. So actually just change this to O. There you go. So now we're setting the text to text 1, and that's subscribe to casual code. So this is not finished yet, but we're getting there. So essentially this is the objective 1, the on-client event. So what we do, copy this whole section, go down 2 lines, paste it, and press objective 2 dot on-client event, and then we'll have to change something. So first of all, change the text 2 dot text to text 2, and then we'll also make sure that the frame is visible. But we will do that here. So we will say, no, actually we won't do this up here. We will do it down here. We'll do fr dot but is that what I call it? BF. So the BF dot visible equals to true, and in this other empty loop we will do BF dot visible equals to true. There we go. So I think this is actually it for now, and we're picked up so we can see which parts of the code run and which parts of the code don't run. So let's make sure we have sound on. We do. The objective is not visible, and let's try ahead and press this part. I don't know which one is which. So this blue part is the first one, so this should say pop up and say subscribe to Casual Code. So if it does, then you need to do it, you know. So let's touch it. Okay, there it is. And first of all, we messed up some part. It did show up, so technically you have to subscribe. But as you can see, I messed up in the text. We actually set the main text to Casual Code and the objective to this. And I think the case is, yeah, this as well. So we just have to change this specific code, and once this is done, then you will see the desired result. So object text is this, and this was supposed to be main text. This is main text, and this, oops, is object text. Let's go ahead and run it again, and this time it will work. Will it work? So pressing it, objective, subscribe to Casual Code. And if you want it to be faster, like you can see, it takes some time. It's updating the objectives. If you want it to be faster, well, then you can go to, and in here you can add the increments. So you can do 0.5 and 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5. Okay, so let's try to run this just to see if it's a bit faster this time. As you can see, it is now coming up faster. And objective 2, that is Casual Code. Great, so this is all for the objective system. Remember, you can add as many as you want. If you want to add another objective, you want to copy this part. You want to change the name of it to trigger part 3. Firstly, in the server, you want to define it. So you want to say local trigger part 3. Trigger 3 on my oe.trigger part 3. That is the first one. Then you need to copy the objective and call it objective 3. You want to add it as well here. So you say local objective 3 equals to ref.objective 3. And finally, you just want to copy this entire function, change it to 3, and trigger 3.destroyed fire client objective 3. Oops, I have to change the name of it to 3. And there we go. And now in the client, you want to pick up the specified ones. So copy this entire thing, paste it here, change 2 to 3, and make another text. So local text 3 equals to, I don't know. And once you have the text, what you go ahead and do is you just copy one of these functions. So I'll just copy this one for now. I'll go ahead and make sure it's objective 3, and you want to just go line by line and do whatever you want here. So this has to be objective, and then inside the OT loop, what we are going to change is to text 3, and that should be it. Just quickly, I'm going to color this up to green, and let's try and run it again. Okay, so first of all, we have this objective, subscribe to Casual Code, which is the first one. Second one, this is objective 2, and the last one, I don't know, which is objective 3. So yeah, that's all for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. I will be leaving some of the source code, like all of this for loop. I might be leaving this in the comments, but if not, then just go ahead and go through the video and understand what it all does. But if you guys really want, then I might be able to leave some source code. Okay, thank you for watching, subscribe and like, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.